To our amazing viewers at Cheating Tales Lab, we'd love to hear, which part of the world are you joining us from? Let us know. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Messenger. Broderick Livingston had built his career on staying calm in chaos. 20 years coordinating urban search and rescue operations across 3 continents had taught him to read danger before it arrived. But nothing prepared him for the look on his 8-year-old son's face that Tuesday afternoon. Miles burst through the front door, his Spider-Man backpack half open, tears streaming down his cheeks. Not the dramatic tears of a scraped knee or a broken toy. These were different. These were the tears of a child who'd glimpsed something dark in the adult world. "Dad." Miles's voice cracked as he ran across their Denver townhouse living room, nearly tripping over his untied shoelaces. Broderick dropped the rescue operation report he'd been reviewing and caught his son mid-stride, pulling him close. Hey, what's wrong, buddy? Did something happen at school?" Miles shook his head violently against Broderick's chest, his small body trembling. "Dad, you have to promise me something. Promise you won't leave me alone. Promise you'll always be here." The words hit Broderick like a physical blow. In 8 years of fatherhood, Miles had never said anything like this. The kid was usually fearless, the first to climb the highest tree, the one who begged to go on the scariest roller coasters. "Miles, look at me." Broderick gently lifted his son's chin. The boy's hazel eyes, so much like his mother Candace's, were red and swollen. "I promise I'm not going anywhere. Now tell me what happened." Miles glanced toward the stairs, checking if his mother was home. She wasn't. Candace had left that morning for another of her real estate seminars in Colorado Springs. Broderick had long since stopped questioning why these seminars seemed to happen twice a week lately. "Tommy's dad," Miles whispered. "Mr. Ray. He's a detective, remember?" Broderick nodded. Frank Ray was a 20-year veteran of the Denver Police Department, Homicide Division. They'd met at a few school functions. Good man. Quiet, observant. "We were leaving school, and Mr. Ray was picking up Tommy. He saw me and got this weird look on his face. He asked Tommy to wait in the car, then he pulled me aside." Miles reached into his backpack with shaking hands and produced a manila envelope, sealed and unmarked. "He said he saw Mommy at the police station today. He said I needed to give this to you, and I can't tell Mommy. Ever." The envelope felt heavier than it should have. Broderick's hands that had pulled survivors from collapsed buildings without trembling, shook slightly as he turned it over. "He looked really serious, Dad. Scared almost. Like when you told me about the earthquake in Mexico and how careful you had to be." Broderick's mind raced through possibilities, each worse than the last. Candace at the police station? She'd mentioned nothing about any legal issues, traffic tickets, nothing. They'd been married for 9 years, together for 11. High school sweethearts who'd reconnected at their 10-year reunion. She'd been working in real estate for the past 3 years, moderately successful, or so she'd said. "Miles, I need you to do something for me." Broderick kept his voice steady, falling into his crisis management mode, calm, authoritative, reassuring. "Go upstairs, pack your overnight bag. Like we're going to Grandpa Marlin's house. Clothes for 2 days, your toothbrush, your favorite books. Can you do that for me? Are we going to Grandpa's?" Miles's tears had stopped, replaced by confusion. "Maybe. Just pack the bag and wait in your room, okay? I'll come get you in a few minutes." Miles nodded and trudged upstairs, casting one last worried glance over his shoulder. Alone in the living room, Broderick sat on the couch and stared at the envelope. The afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows suddenly felt wrong, too cheerful for whatever this moment was about to become. His phone buzzed, a message from Candace, running late. "Don't wait for dinner. Love you." The casualness of it felt obscene. He opened the envelope. Inside were photographs. 8 of them, printed on standard photo paper. The first showed Candace entering the police station's main entrance downtown, unmistakable in her red coat. Timestamp, 9:47 a.m. today. The second showed her in an interview room with 2 detectives Broderick didn't recognize. The third made his blood run cold. Candace sitting close to a man Broderick had never seen before. Too close. The man's hand was on her knee under the table. But it was the 4th photograph that made the world tilt sideways. It was a photocopy of a police report. Candace's name at the top. Filed 3 weeks ago. The header read, "Domestic violence complaint, preliminary interview." His name was throughout the document, described as increasingly volatile, possible substance abuse, recent personality changes suggesting mental instability. None of it was true. None of it had happened. The fifth photo showed Candace leaving the station with the unknown man, their body language intimate. The sixth was a surveillance still from what looked like a hotel, Candace and the man entering a room together. The seventh. Dad. Miles's voice came from the stairs. I'm packed. Are you okay? Broderick quickly shoved the photos back into the envelope. But he'd seen enough. The seventh photo had shown a document, and though the image was slightly blurred, he'd read enough to understand. Life insurance policy. His life. $2 million. Beneficiary. Candace Livingston. Policy date. 6 months ago. He'd signed it. He remembered that much. Candace had explained it was smart planning now that he was 42. He'd been busy with a major operation in Arizona, hadn't read the fine print. The eighth photo was a close-up of a prescription bottle in their bathroom cabinet. His name on the label. A medication he'd never heard of, didn't remember being prescribed. He'd been feeling strange lately, dizzy spells, memory fog, unexplained nausea. Candace had been so caring, so worried, encouraging him to rest, making him special smoothies in the morning, special teas at night. His hands started shaking again. Miles, we're leaving. Right now. Broderick's voice came out harder than he intended. He grabbed his keys, his wallet, his laptop bag. His mind was already calculating what he needed, where to go, who to trust. The photos had included one more item, a handwritten note on Denver PD stationery, Frank Ray's name printed at the bottom. Livingston, I don't know what's happening, but you need to see this. She came in today to amend her statement, make it stronger. The guy with her is Clarence Bryant. Bad news. Loan shark, suspected in 2 disappearances. She's asking for a restraining order against you, claims you've been erratic, possibly dangerous. They're building a case. I could lose my job for this, but your kid doesn't deserve to lose his father. Be careful. Trust no one. Fr. Broderick grabbed Miles's hand, pulling him toward the garage. We're going on an adventure, buddy. Just you and me for a little while. What about Mom? The question hung in the air as Broderick opened the car door. What about Mom, indeed? The woman he'd loved, built a life with, trusted completely. The woman who was apparently trying to frame him, possibly trying to kill him, collaborating with a known criminal. Mom's going to be busy for a while, Broderick finally said, strapping Miles into the back seat. We'll talk about it later. But right now, I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Miles nodded, clutching his backpack to his chest. As Broderick backed out of the garage, he caught sight of their wedding photo in the hallway, visible through the door. Candace in white, her smile brilliant, her hand in his. He'd thought he knew that woman. He'd been wrong. His phone buzzed again, another text from Candace. Actually, I'll be home in 20 minutes. Can't wait to see you both. Broderick deleted the message and turned off his phone. In the rearview mirror, he watched their townhouse disappear as he turned the corner. He had 20 minutes, maybe less. 20 minutes to disappear, to think, to plan. 20 minutes before his wife came home to an empty house and realized her target had escaped. Chapter 2. The Investigation. The budget motel on the outskirts of Morrison, 30 minutes from Denver, wasn't the Ritz, but it was cash only, and the clerk barely looked at them. Broderick registered under his grandfather's name, a man who'd been dead for 5 years, and paid for 3 nights in advance. Room 127 smelled of cigarettes and industrial cleaner, but it had 2 beds, a deadbolt, and most importantly, no connection to Broderick Livingston, urban search and rescue coordinator, family man, apparently soon-to-be murder victim. Is this part of the adventure? Miles asked, dropping his backpack on the bed nearest the window. Yeah, buddy. The exciting, unexpected kind. Broderick forced a smile. Why don't you watch some TV? I need to make a few phone calls. While Miles flipped through channels, eventually settling on some animated show about talking cars, Broderick stepped outside into the fading Colorado evening. The mountains loomed purple in the distance, indifferent to human problems. His first call was to Marlon Noble, his closest friend and the only person he truly trusted right now. Marlon answered on the second ring. Brod, why are you calling from a weird number? You in a meeting? Marlon, I need you to listen carefully. Don't go home tonight. Don't go to your office. Meet me at the place we went after the Tanner operation. You remember? Silence. Then, the sports bar in Lakewood? What's going on? I'll explain when I see you. 1 hour. Come alone. If anyone asks, you haven't heard from me. Broad, you're scaring me. Good. That means you're taking this seriously. 1 hour. Broderick's second call was to a burner phone number he'd memorized years ago but never used. 3 rings, then a woman's voice, professional and cautious. Verification? Tango 7 Whiskey, Broderick said, using the code phrase from his Federal Rescue Certification. He'd met Verna Short during a Joint Federal Disaster Response in Texas. She'd been ATF, specialized in tracking illegal weapons. They'd kept in touch sporadically, professional courtesy. I need information on someone. Clarence Bryant, Denver area. Hold. The line went silent for 30 seconds. Bryant. Jesus, Broderick. What are you into? I'm not into anything. He's into my wife. And I think they're trying to kill me. Another pause. I'll have something for you by morning. Same verification code. Stay safe. The third call was the hardest. His father, Marlon Noble Sr., had retired from the fire department 10 years ago and moved to a cabin near Estes Park. Broderick hesitated, thumb hovering over the contact, then pocketed the phone. Not yet. The fewer people who knew where they were, the safer Miles would be. Back in the room, Miles had fallen asleep on top of the covers, still in his clothes, the TV flickering blue light across his peaceful face. 8 years old and already carrying the weight of adult secrets. Broderick covered him with a blanket and sat at the small desk, spreading out the photographs under the weak desk lamp. He forced himself to look at each image objectively, the way he'd assess a disaster site. Methodically, emotionally removed, looking for structural weaknesses and hidden dangers. Candace and Clarence Bryant at the police station. Their body language spoke of familiarity, intimacy. This wasn't new. How long had this been going on? The domestic violence complaint, filed 3 weeks ago. He reviewed his mental timeline. 3 weeks ago, Candace had suggested he should see a doctor about his mood swings. She'd been so concerned, so loving. He'd brushed it off as work stress. 2 weeks ago, she'd accidentally broken his favorite coffee mug, and he'd been annoyed. More annoyed than made sense. She'd looked frightened. He'd apologized profusely, confused by his own irritation. Had she been setting that up? Creating incidents she could later report? The hotel surveillance, 6 months ago, around the time she'd had him sign the life insurance policy. How long had they been planning this? The prescription bottle. He pulled up his phone browser. The phone was off, but still functional for offline research. He'd photographed the label before leaving. The medication was an anxiolytic, typically prescribed for severe anxiety, but in higher doses could cause confusion, aggression, memory problems. He'd never been prescribed this. Never seen a doctor about anxiety. Candace was poisoning him, gradually, making him appear unstable. The pattern became clear. Candace and Bryant had been building a case. Make Broderick seem erratic and dangerous. File police reports. Then what? Claim self-defense when something happened to him? Stage a suicide? Collect the insurance money and disappear? But why? Money seemed obvious, but $2 million, split between them, minus funeral costs, legal fees. It wasn't enough to motivate someone to murder. Unless Bryant had debts, or they needed startup capital for something bigger. Broderick's phone vibrated. He turned it back on, removed the SIM card, and was using it in airplane mode. An email notification appeared, one that had come through before he'd disabled it. From Candace's cloud storage account. They shared a family plan. He had access to her backups, something they'd set up years ago for convenience. He almost dismissed it, then paused. When was the last time he'd actually looked at what Candace backed up to the cloud? Using the motel's Wi-Fi, risky, but necessary, he logged into the shared account through a VPN. Her photo backup loaded slowly. Thousands of images, organized by date. He scrolled backward, looking for anything unusual. Real estate seminars, photos of properties, selfies with colleagues, pictures of Miles at school events. All normal. Then, 6 months ago, the patterns changed. Photos of Broderick, taken when he didn't know she was photographing him. Looking tired, frustrated, angry. But the contexts were wrong. That photo of him looking furious? That was from a rescue operation where they'd lost 2 civilians. He'd been devastated, not angry. But from the photo alone, without context, he looked violent. She'd been building a dossier on him. He scrolled further. Messages app backup. His hands trembled as he opened her text message history. Most of it was mundane, parent-teacher communications, real estate clients, family group chats. Then a separate thread, contact name CB. Clarence Bryant. The messages went back 9 months. CB, when are you going to tell him? Candace, soon. I need more time. He's starting to suspect something's off. CB, the medication's working though? He's showing symptoms? Candace, yes. He's confused, forgetful. Had a minor incident at work last week. Snapped at a colleague. It's building. CB, good. My contact at the insurance company says the policy's solid. No suicide clause after 6 months. Accident or death by misadventure, full payout. Candace, I still don't like this. There has to be another way. CB, you owe me $180,000, Candace. Your real estate investments were actually my money, remember? You gambled it away. You lost. This is how you pay me back. Unless you want your precious Miles to know his mother's a degenerate gambler who embezzled from her clients too? Broderick's stomach turned. Candace had a gambling problem? She'd stolen from clients? How had he missed this? He kept reading, messages becoming darker, more desperate. Candace, what if I just leave? Take Miles and disappear? CB, you're funny. You'd be dead within a month. I have people everywhere. The only way out is through. We do this, clean. Accident, investigation, payout. You give me my $180,000, plus interest. Let's call it $300,000 total. You keep the rest, go rebuild your life. Everyone wins. Except Broderick, but he'll be past caring. Candace, I can't believe I'm doing this. I loved him once. CB once. Past tense. Focus on that. The messages continued, detailing their plan. The poison, administered through herbal supplements Candace had convinced Broderick to take for heart health. The staged incidents, arguments over nothing, financial stress she'd created by gambling away their savings. The police reports, carefully crafted to paint a picture of an unstable, potentially dangerous husband. The endgame, a tragic accident that would look like suicide, or perhaps death during one of his increasingly erratic episodes. They'd planned it all, meticulously, coldly, and it had nearly worked. Broderick saved screenshots of everything, uploading them to a secure cloud service Candace didn't know about. Evidence. Protection. His phone buzzed. Marlon, texting from a new number, at the bar. Where are you? Broderick checked on Miles, still sleeping soundly, then left a note on the nightstand. Went to get food. Locked the door. Back in 30 minutes. Love, Dad. The sports bar in Lakewood was half empty on a Tuesday night. Marlon Noble sat in a back booth, 2 untouched beers in front of him, his dark face lined with worry. Marlon was 60, 20 years older than Broderick, a former fire captain who'd mentored him through his early rescue operations career. When Broderick's own father had died during a training exercise 15 years ago, Marlon had stepped in, become the father figure he'd needed. Talk, Marlon said as Broderick slid into the booth. Broderick laid out everything. The envelope, the photos, the evidence, Candace's betrayal, the murder plot. Marlon listened in silence, his expression hardening with each revelation. That boy okay? Marlon finally asked. He's tough. He'll be okay. Once I figure out how to fix this. Fix it. Brod, you need to go to the police right now. Take them everything. And tell them what? That my wife filed domestic violence complaints against me, that I fled with my son, that I'm reading her private messages without permission? Frank Ray risked his career giving me that envelope. I can't burn him. Besides, I have no proof the medication isn't legitimately prescribed. No proof Bryant's threatening her. They'll think I'm paranoid, unstable, which is exactly what they've been setting me up to appear. Marlon rubbed his face. So what's your play? I need to investigate Bryant. Find out who he really is, what he's really into. I need leverage, something I can use to make this stop without destroying Miles's life or mine. That's dangerous, Brod. These sound like dangerous people. I know, but I'm good at dangerous. I've pulled people from burning buildings, collapsed structures, disaster zones. I can handle one corrupt loan shark and my lying wife. Marlon studied him for a long moment. You've changed. Just in the last few hours. You look different. I feel different. This afternoon, I was a husband and father, trying to do right by my family. Now, Broderick's expression hardened. Now I'm a man who realizes his wife was trying to murder him for money. And I'm not going to let that stand. Chapter 3. The Past Unveiled. By morning, Broderick had 3 hours of sleep and a comprehensive dossier on Clarence Bryant, courtesy of his ATF contact and his own late-night research. Clarence Bryant, 54, born in Colorado Springs. Juvenile record sealed. First adult arrest at 19, assault with a deadly weapon, charges dropped. Second arrest at 23, operating an illegal gambling operation, plea deal, probation. Third arrest at 28, loan sharking, witness intimidation. That one stuck, 18 months in federal prison. Since his release, Bryant had been clean on paper. He owned 3 legitimate businesses, a pawn shop, a check-cashing service, and a consulting firm that appeared to do exactly nothing except launder money. He lived in a luxury condo in Cherry Creek, drove an expensive imported car, and frequently traveled to Las Vegas, Atlantic City, and international gambling destinations. Underground, he was known as someone who loaned money to desperate people at impossible rates. Someone who always collected, one way or another. 2 people who'd owed him money had disappeared in the past 5 years. No bodies found, no arrests made, but the pattern was clear. And Candace had gotten tangled up with him. The question was how. Broderick pulled up Candace's financial records. He had access to their joint accounts and credit cards. He hadn't looked closely in months, trusting her to handle the day-to-day finances while he focused on work. Stupid. So stupid. The patterns emerged quickly. 3 years ago, Candace's real estate career had taken off. Good commissions, steady income. Then, 2 years ago, irregular cash withdrawals. Small at first, $500 here, $1,000 there. Then larger, $5,000, $10,000. Always cash, always from their savings account. When confronted, and he vaguely remembered asking about it, she'd explained it as business expenses, cash deals with contractors, normal real estate operations. He'd believed her. 18 months ago, the cash withdrawals stopped. Around the same time, she'd taken out a home equity line of credit without telling him. $150,000, secured against their townhouse. The money had disappeared immediately, transferred to an LLC Broderick had never heard of. Bryant's LLC, he now knew. Looking at the records with fresh eyes, the pattern was obvious. Candace had been gambling, losing, borrowing from Bryant to cover losses, losing more, spiraling deeper. The home equity line had been a desperate move to pay him back. But it hadn't been enough. So Bryant had offered her an alternative, murder her husband for the insurance money. And she'd agreed. Broderick sat in the motel room's uncomfortable chair, watching dawn break over the mountains, Miles still sleeping peacefully, and felt something cold solidify in his chest. Not rage, that would come later. This was colder, calculated. The same mental state he entered when planning complex rescue operations, when lives hung in the balance and emotions had to be locked away in favor of strategy. His phone buzzed, a call from an unknown number. He stepped outside to answer. Mr. Livingston? A woman's voice, professional, clipped. My name is Detective Eugenia Cruz. Denver Police. I'm trying to locate you regarding a family matter. Your wife filed a missing persons report this morning. She's very worried about you and your son. Of course she had. When they didn't come home last night, when she couldn't reach him, she'd gone to the police. Playing the concerned wife, the worried mother. Detective, I'm fine. My son is fine. We're visiting family. Your wife says you've been under a lot of stress lately. Having some trouble at work, some health issues. She's concerned you might not be thinking clearly. There it was. The narrative. The setup. I appreciate her concern, but I'm completely fine. I'll contact her when I'm ready. Mr. Livingston, I need to know where you are. For your son's safety. Your wife has custody rights. Joint custody, detective. Which means I have equal rights to be with my son. We're not in danger. We're not in distress. And unless you have legal grounds to detain me, this conversation is over. He ended the call and immediately removed the battery from his phone. They'd be tracking it, trying to locate him. He had maybe an hour before Candace escalated further, maybe filed for an emergency restraining order, claimed he'd kidnapped Miles. Time to move. He woke Miles gently, helped him pack, and they drove north, toward Marlon's cabin in Estes Park. Isolated, defensible, off the grid. A place to think, to plan. As they drove through the mountain dawn, Miles finally spoke. Dad, is Mom trying to hurt us? The question hung in the air, sharp and terrible. Broderick wanted to lie, to protect his son from the truth. But Miles had started this by bringing him the envelope. Miles deserved honesty, as much as an 8-year-old could handle. Mom made some bad choices, buddy. She got involved with some bad people. And yeah, I think she might try to hurt me. Not you, never you. She loves you. But she might try to hurt me to solve her problems. So we're hiding? For now? Just until I figure out how to fix this. Can you fix it? Broderick glanced in the rearview mirror, meeting his son's eyes. I don't know yet. But I promise you this. Whatever happens, you'll be safe. And the truth will come out. The people who did bad things will face consequences. Will Mom go to jail? Maybe. Probably. I'm sorry, Miles. I know that's scary. Miles was quiet for a long time. Then, it's okay, Dad. I'm scared, but I trust you. You save people. That's what you do. You'll save us too. The simple faith in his son's voice nearly broke him. But it also strengthened him. Miles was counting on him. He couldn't afford to fail. They reached the cabin just after 9 a.m. Marlon was waiting, having driven up ahead of them. The older man pulled Broderick into a brief, hard hug. Made some calls, Marlon said quietly, while Miles explored the cabin's loft bedroom. Got some friends who can help. But Brod, you need to understand, what you're planning, it could go sideways fast. Bryant's connected. Your wife's got the law on her side right now. You're in a bad position. I know, but I have something they don't. What's that? I'm smarter than them. I plan better. And I'm not going to play defense anymore. Broderick's expression hardened. They tried to make me the victim in their story. Now I'm going to flip the script. They're going to be the victims in mine. That sounds like revenge talk. It is revenge talk. But it's also justice. They tried to kill me, Marlon. They're using my son as leverage. They poisoned me, framed me, conspired to murder me. And you know what? I'm going to make sure everyone knows it. And I'm going to make sure they pay for it. Legally, publicly, and completely. Marlon searched his face. You've got a plan? I'm working on one. But yeah, I've got ideas. See, Bryant thinks he's untouchable because he's been doing this for years and never been caught. Candace thinks she's safe because she's playing the worried wife. They think I'm going to run, hide, play defense. And you're not. No, I'm going to make them play defense. I'm going to turn their plan against them. And by the time I'm done, they're going to wish they'd never heard the name Broderick Livingston. Chapter 4. The Enemy Revealed. For 3 days, Broderick Livingston disappeared from the grid. No phone calls, no credit cards, no digital footprint. To anyone looking, he'd vanished into the Colorado wilderness with his son. Candace played her role perfectly. The distraught wife on local news, pleading for her husband's safe return, dabbing at manufactured tears. But Broderick wasn't hiding. He was hunting. In Marlon's cabin, he'd converted the dining room into an operations center. Maps of Denver, photographs of Bryant's properties, financial records, cellular triangulation data. Everything spread across the table like a military campaign. Miles stayed upstairs, doing online schoolwork Marlon had arranged, occasionally venturing down to find his father staring at documents with an intensity that was both comforting and frightening. Your dad's in his work zone, Marlon had explained to the boy. When bad things happen, when buildings collapse or people are trapped, your dad does this. He studies, he plans, he figures out how to save people. Right now, he's figuring out how to save both of you. The breakthrough came on day 4. Broderick's ATF contact had sent encrypted files, years of investigation into Bryant's operations. The federal government had been building a case against him for money laundering and racketeering, but they'd never had enough evidence to move forward. Witnesses disappeared. Records vanished. Bryant was meticulous, insulated by layers of legitimate business and a network of intimidated debtors who'd never testify. But there was a weakness. There always was. Bryant's pawn shop, Crystal Young's Treasures, named after some long-dead relative, processed thousands of transactions monthly. Legitimate on the surface, but serving as a cash-washing operation underneath. People brought in stolen goods. Bryant gave them cents on the dollar, then sold the items for massive profits. More importantly, desperate gamblers pawned family heirlooms for cash to pay their debts, only to have Bryant refuse redemption and keep the items. It was a small operation compared to his other businesses, but it was personal. Bryant ran it himself, maintained the inventory personally, trusted no one else with the details. Which meant the records were in the shop. The real records, the ones that would show the cash flow discrepancies, the unreported income, the stolen goods, the pattern of fraud. Broderick studied the building's layout, a corner storefront in a declining strip mall in Aurora. Security cameras, alarm system, but nothing sophisticated. Bryant was arrogant, confident his reputation protected him better than technology ever could. "You're not seriously considering breaking in," Marlin said, reading Broderick's expression. "Not breaking. Entering legally. With a warrant." Broderick pulled up another document, the ATF investigation files. "Look at this. Federal agents requested warrants twice, but both times they were denied for insufficient evidence. But what if new evidence emerged? What if a concerned citizen provided testimony about illegal activities?" "What concerned citizen?" "Candace Livingston." Marlin frowned. "She's not going to testify against Bryant. She's in bed with him, literally. She doesn't know she's going to testify yet." Broderick's smile was cold. "But she will. See, I've been thinking about this wrong. I've been seeing them as a team, united against me. But they're not. They're predator and prey. He's blackmailing her into murder. She's terrified of him. The messages prove that. She didn't want to do this. She felt trapped. That's supposed to make me feel sorry for her? She's trying to kill you. I don't care about your sympathy or mine. I care about leverage. Candace is the weak link. She's scared. She's in over her head. And she loves Miles. That much I believe. She won't want him to know she's a murderer. She won't want him to grow up visiting her in prison. So you're going to what? Convince her to turn on Bryant? Not convince. Force. But I need more ammunition first. I need to know everything about Bryant's operation. And I need him to make a mistake." The plan formed over the next 24 hours, refined with Marlin's input and intel from Broderick's rescue operation contacts. People who knew surveillance, infiltration, evidence collection. People who owed him favors from disaster zones and rescue operations around the world. Step 1. Get inside Bryant's operation. Step 2. Document everything. Step 3. Use it to force Candace's cooperation. Step 4. Bring them both down. Simple in concept. Dangerous in execution. Broderick recruited his first ally on day 5. Donald Cabrera, a former Army Ranger who'd worked with Broderick on earthquake rescue operations in Haiti. Donald now ran a private security consulting firm in Denver. Legitimate work, but with skills that could be flexibly applied. "You're asking me to help you commit multiple felonies," Donald said over encrypted chat. "Breaking and entering, surveillance without consent, possibly blackmail. I'm asking you to help me stay alive and keep my son safe. I'm asking you to help bring down a loan shark who's destroyed dozens of lives, including my wife's." Silence on the other end. "Then, what do you need?" "Equipment. Training. Backup. I need to get into Bryant's pawn shop, copy his records, and get out without leaving evidence." "Can you do that?" "Can I do it? Please. It's adorable that you think that's hard." "When?" "Tomorrow night. Bryant closes at 9, does his end-of-day accounting until about 10:30, then leaves. The shop's empty from 10:30 until 6 a.m. That's our window. That's a tight window for a smash and grab. Not smash and grab. Careful infiltration and documentation. I need those records intact, admissible in court. I need to be able to hand them to federal prosecutors and have them be useful. You're not just looking for revenge. You're building a case. Revenge is too simple. I want justice. I want them destroyed, legally, publicly, permanently. I want Miles to see that when people do terrible things, there are consequences. I want to teach him that you don't have to become a monster to fight monsters. You just have to be smarter than them. Donald's laugh came through the encrypted line. "That's cold, man. I like it. Yeah, okay, I'm in. But if we get caught?" "We won't. I've coordinated rescue operations in war zones during active combat. I've pulled people from buildings mid-collapse. I'm very good at not dying. Tomorrow night, Crystal Young's Treasures. I'll send you the address." The next evening, Broderick left Miles with Marlin at the cabin, both of them armed with instructions to disappear to a secondary location if anything went wrong. Miles had hugged his father tight, whispered, "Come back safe," and Broderick promised he would. He met Donald in a parking lot 2 blocks from Bryant's pawn shop. Donald arrived in a nondescript van, dressed head to toe in black tactical gear, carrying a duffel bag full of equipment that would have made a Hollywood heist team jealous. "Thermal cameras show Bryant left 15 minutes ago," Donald reported, checking his tablet. "Building's empty. Alarm system is basic. I can loop the security feed from here, give us a clean window. But we need to move fast. You ready for this?" Broderick pulled on his own black outfit, checked the small camera mounted on his vest, tested his comm link. "Ready." They approached from the rear, using the loading dock entrance. Donald made short work of the lock, 30 seconds with specialized tools, and they were inside, creeping through the dim storage area. The pawn shop was a treasure trove of human desperation, shelves lined with jewelry, electronics, musical instruments, all the things people had traded for quick cash they'd probably never repay. Broderick felt a pang of sadness looking at it all, but pushed it aside. Focus. Mission. The office was in the back, behind bulletproof glass. Bryant's personal domain. Donald bypassed the lock on the office door, and they slipped inside. Jackpot, Donald whispered, pointing to an old-fashioned file cabinet and a desktop computer. Guy doesn't trust cloud storage. Everything's local. Broderick pulled out a portable hard drive with cloning software. While it copied Bryant's entire computer system, he photographed every document in the file cabinet. Transaction ledgers showing real prices versus reported prices. Names and addresses of debtors. Payment schedules. Threats documented in Bryant's own handwriting. Copies of pawn tickets for items worth thousands that had been sold for pennies. And then, in the bottom drawer, the crown jewel, a ledger labeled Private Transactions. Broderick photographed every page. Bryant's loan shark operation, documented in detail. Names, amounts, interest rates, some as high as 300%. And notations when people couldn't pay. 2 entries particularly jumped out, both labeled, Resolved, CN, with dates corresponding to when 2 men had disappeared. CN, Clarence's notation? Code for something worse? We've got company. Donald's voice crackled through the calm, car pulling into the front lot. Shit, it's Bryant. He's coming back. How long? 2 minutes, maybe less. Broderick's hands moved faster, photographing the last pages, closing the drawer exactly as he'd found it. The computer clone was at 87%. Too slow. Leave it, Donald urged. We need to go now. 10 more seconds. Broderick watched the progress bar crawl forward. 91%. 94%. 97%. Keys rattled in the front door. 100%. Broderick grabbed the drive, and they bolted for the back exit. Behind them, lights switched on. Bryant's voice called out, "Hello? Someone here." They cleared the loading dock, raced down the alley, reached Donald's van. As they pulled away, Broderick looked back to see Bryant standing in the alley, illuminated by the security light, staring after them. Had he seen the van? Seen them? Gotten a plate number? We're good, Donald assured him. Stolen plates, clean getaway. He suspects something, but he won't know what. And you got what you needed? Broderick held up the hard drive and memory card. Everything. Every crime, every victim, every illegal transaction. Enough to put him away for decades. So what now? Now I make a phone call, and I set the second trap. Chapter 5, The Squeeze. At 2 a.m., Broderick Livingston sat in an all-night diner in Fort Collins, spreading out the fruits of his infiltration across a corner booth table. Digital copies of Bryant's records, printed and organized into a damning timeline of criminal activity spanning 15 years. Across from him sat Lester Lee, a federal prosecutor whom Broderick had met during a joint task force operation in California. They'd pulled survivors from a collapsed courthouse together, spent 3 days digging through rubble, bonded over terrible coffee, and the shared conviction that justice mattered. Lester studied the documents in silence, occasionally making notes, his expression growing darker with each page. "This is gold," he finally said. "Usable, actionable gold. We can build a RICO case with this. Money laundering, extortion, possibly murder. How did you obtain it? Does it matter? Yes. If you obtained it illegally, it's inadmissible. Fruit of the poisonous tree. Defense will get it thrown out before we even get to trial." Broderick leaned back. "What if I told you it came from a concerned citizen who had legal access to Bryant's business?" "What concerned citizen?" "Candace Livingston. My wife. Bryant's co-conspirator in trying to murder me." Lester's eyebrows rose. "You're going to flip your wife?" "I'm going to give her a choice. Cooperation or destruction. Prison or witness protection. Testify against Bryant and face minimal charges as a coerced accomplice, or go down with him for conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and accessory to whatever other crimes we can pin on her." "That's a hell of a gamble. What if she refuses? What if she warns Bryant?" "She won't, because I'm going to make her an offer she can't refuse. And I'm going to do it publicly, with witnesses, in a way that protects Miles from the fallout." Broderick pulled out another document. The custody agreement he drafted with help from a family lawyer Marlon had connected him with. Joint custody stays, but Miles lives with me primarily. Candace gets supervised visitation, conditional on her cooperation and rehabilitation. If she cooperates with the federal investigation, testifies against Bryant, and enters a treatment program for gambling addiction, the DA will recommend minimal sentencing, probation, community service, restitution. She'll avoid prison. She'll be able to maintain a relationship with Miles. And if she doesn't cooperate, then I present this to the police. Broderick produced the screenshots of Candace and Bryant's text messages, the evidence of the murder plot, the domestic violence false reports. She goes to prison for attempted murder. I get full custody, and Bryant skates free because we don't have enough to charge him without her testimony. Everybody loses except him. Lester studied the strategy with grudging respect. You've thought this through. I spent 5 days thinking about nothing else. Look, I'm not trying to destroy Candace. I'm trying to save my son from growing up with a mother in prison for murder. I'm trying to give her a path to redemption, to be the mother Miles deserves. But I'm not going to let her or Bryant get away with what they tried to do. Justice matters. Consequences matter. You sound like a prosecutor. I sound like a father. And a man who's tired of being treated like a victim. They spent the next 3 hours refining the approach, coordinating with Lester's office, preparing the legal framework. By sunrise, they had a plan. Broderick would arrange a meeting with Candace in a neutral location, a police station, with a victim advocate present, making it clear he wasn't there to harm or threaten her. He'd present the evidence, both against Bryant and against her. He'd offer the deal: cooperation for leniency, testimony for freedom, treatment for rehabilitation. She'd have 24 hours to decide. And if she chooses wrong, Lester asked, then I'll grieve for the woman I thought I married. And I'll make sure my son knows that sometimes people we love make terrible choices, and that love doesn't mean enabling those choices. And Bryant will find out that I'm a man who keeps his promises. I promised Miles I'd keep him safe. I promised myself I'd make this right. I keep my promises. The meeting was set for the following afternoon at the Denver Police Department's Family Crisis Unit. Detective Frank Ray, the man who'd started this by giving Miles the envelope, agreed to facilitate. His captain had been briefed on the situation and recognized that Frank had potentially saved Broderick's life. Candace arrived looking haggard, desperate, accompanied by a lawyer Bryant had provided, Dolores Payne, known for defending organized crime figures. The moment Dolores walked in, Broderick knew Bryant was taking Candace's potential cooperation seriously. My client has nothing to say to you, Dolores began. This is harassment, intimidation of a domestic violence victim. Miss Payne, Lester interrupted, placing his federal prosecutor credentials on the table. Your client is the one who should be worried about harassment charges. And worse, much worse. He laid out the evidence, the text messages proving the murder plot, the fake police reports, the life insurance fraud conspiracy. Candace's face drained of color as each document appeared. This is fabricated, Dolores tried. Illegally obtained. Obtained from a shared family cloud account Mr. Livingston had legal access to, and subsequently disclosed to federal investigators in the interest of his own safety. Completely admissible. And that's just the beginning. Lester produced the documents from Bryant's pawn shop. Your client's co-conspirator has been running a criminal enterprise for 15 years. Money laundering, extortion, possibly murder. And Mrs. Livingston has been actively participating in a conspiracy to commit insurance fraud and murder. That's 25 to life. Candace made a small, broken sound. I didn't. I never wanted. Candace, don't say anything, Dolores warned. But Broderick leaned forward, his voice gentle despite everything. Candace, I know you didn't want this. I read the messages. I know Bryant was blackmailing you, threatening you, forcing you into this. I know you have a gambling problem. I know you were desperate. Her eyes met his. Those hazel eyes that had once been his world, now filled with tears and terror. Brod, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I never meant for it to go this far. I owed him so much money, and he said this was the only way, and I was scared. Mrs. Livingston, stop talking, Dolores commanded. But Candace wasn't listening anymore. The dam had broken. He said he'd hurt Miles. He said if I didn't help him, he'd make sure Miles had an accident. A terrible accident. I couldn't let that happen. I thought if I just went along with it, If we did this one terrible thing, it would be over and we'd be free. You were never going to be free, Broderick said quietly. Men like Bryant don't let go. He'd have held this over you forever. Used you, controlled you, maybe killed you too once you were no longer useful. I know that now, Candace whispered. God, Brod, I'm so sorry. I never stopped loving you. I'm so messed up. I have a problem, I know I do, and I got in so deep and I didn't know how to get out. Lester pushed a document across the table. Here's how you get out, Mrs. Livingston. Full cooperation with federal investigators. Complete testimony against Clarence Bryant. Surrender all evidence, all knowledge of his operations. Enter a court-mandated gambling addiction treatment program. Make restitution to your real estate clients for any funds misappropriated. And accept a plea agreement for reduced charges, conspiracy to commit fraud, filing false police reports. You'll get probation, community service, mandatory treatment. No prison time. You'll be able to maintain supervised visitation with your son. Candace read through the document, tears streaming down her face. And if I say no? Then you and Bryant both go to prison, Broderick said. And Miles grows up visiting his mother behind bars, knowing she tried to murder his father. Is that what you want? Brod, please. Candace, think about Miles. Think about giving him a chance to have a mother who's better than this. A mother who made terrible mistakes but chose redemption over destruction. You can still be in his life. You can still be his mom. But you have to choose that. Right now. Dolores Payne tried one more time. Mrs. Livingston, if you sign this, you're admitting to federal crimes. You're betraying someone who will not take that betrayal lightly. Bryant has resources, connections. Bryant has a federal indictment coming, Lester countered, based on evidence that will put him away for life. He won't be threatening anyone from a maximum security prison. Candace looked at Broderick one last time. Will you ever forgive me? I don't know, Broderick answered honestly. But Miles might. If you do this. If you choose the right thing, finally. For him. Candace picked up the pen with shaking hands. Where do I sign? Chapter 6. The Trap Springs. 48 hours after Candace signed the cooperation agreement, federal agents executed simultaneous raids on all of Clarence Bryant's properties. The pawn shop, his condo, his consulting office, even his storage units. They seized computers, files, cash, everything. Bryant was arrested at his condo at 6 a.m., caught completely off guard. For a man who'd operated in the shadows for 15 years, who'd intimidated witnesses and evaded prosecution repeatedly, the speed and precision of the federal operation was devastating. Broderick watched the news coverage from Marlon's cabin, Miles beside him on the couch. Is that the bad man? Miles asked, pointing to the screen showing Bryant in handcuffs, being led to a police car. That's him, buddy. Good. He looks bad. Mean eyes. Bryant's eyes were indeed cold, calculating, even in defeat. But there was fear there too, buried under the bravado. He knew his empire was crumbling. The press conference that afternoon was damning. Lester Lee, speaking for the U.S. Attorney's Office, outlined 47 federal charges: racketeering, money laundering, extortion, loan sharking, wire fraud, conspiracy to commit murder. Each charge backed by the evidence Broderick had stolen. Though the official story was that evidence had come from a confidential informant with legal access to Bryant's businesses. Candace's name never came up publicly. The deal protected her, kept her cooperation confidential. Only the insiders knew she'd flipped. But Bryant would know. He'd figure it out. And that's where Broderick's plan entered its most dangerous phase. He's going to come after me, Candace said during her second debriefing with federal agents. Broderick had been allowed to attend, supervised, to provide additional context. She looked smaller somehow, diminished, hollow-eyed from stress and lack of sleep. Even from jail, he'll send someone. He told me once that betrayal is the only unforgivable sin. That's why you're going into protective custody, Lester explained. A safe house, federal marshals, new identity if necessary. He can't reach you. He can reach anyone. You don't understand who he's connected to. But Broderick did understand. And he'd planned for that too. Because Bryant wasn't the only one with connections. Broderick had spent 20 years building relationships with federal agencies, local police, international rescue organizations, military units. People who owed him favors. People who remembered the time he'd pulled their colleagues from a collapsed building or coordinated a rescue operation that saved dozens of lives. or provided expert testimony that nailed a corrupt contractor. He called in every favor now. Within 72 hours, Candace was in a federal safe house in an undisclosed location. Bryant's known associates were under surveillance. His financial accounts were frozen. His bail was denied. Flight risk, danger to witnesses, severity of charges. And Broderick had arranged one more element, a leak. Not official, but strategic. Word got out through Bryant's criminal network that he'd been keeping detailed records of all his transactions, all his associates, all his deals. That the feds had everything. That anyone connected to him was potentially exposed. The criminal ecosystem that had supported Bryant for years turned on him instantly. Associates disappeared, fled the state, deleted their contact information. Nobody wanted to be the next name on a federal indictment. Within a week, Bryant was completely isolated. No resources, no support network, no allies. "You destroyed him," Marlon observed, watching the news coverage of Bryant's arraignment. The once confident loan shark looked broken, desperate, diminished. "Not just arrested him. You systematically dismantled everything he'd built." "He tried to take everything from me," Broderick replied. "My life, my son, my dignity. Turnabout is fair play. That was more than turnabout. That was warfare. I coordinate disaster response. I know how to identify critical infrastructure and eliminate it." Bryant's infrastructure was his reputation, his network, his fear factor. "I eliminated all three." Broderick's expression was hard, satisfied. He's done. Even if he somehow beats these charges, which he won't, he's finished in the criminal world. Nobody will work with him. Nobody will trust him. He'll be marked as the guy who got rolled by a rescue coordinator and his gambling-addicted wife. Speaking of your wife, what happens to her now? She completes the treatment program, testifies at trial, serves her probation. After that, Broderick shrugged. She'll have to rebuild her life. Miles will decide how much of a relationship he wants with her as he gets older. I'll support whatever he chooses. And you? What do you want? Justice. For her to acknowledge what she did, to take responsibility, to be better. I don't love her anymore. That died when I read those messages. But I don't hate her either. She's sick. She made terrible choices under terrible pressure. She needs help, not just punishment. That's remarkably mature. No, it's just practical. Miles needs to see that even when people do terrible things, there's a path to redemption if they choose it. He needs to see that you can be angry with someone and still want them to get better. That consequences and compassion can coexist. Marlon studied him for a long moment. "You've changed. This whole thing, it's changed you." "Yeah, I'm not sure if it's for better or worse yet. But I'm different." Broderick looked out the window at the Colorado mountains, peaceful and indifferent to human drama. "I used to think the world was basically good, that people generally try to do right by each other. Now I know that's naive. People are capable of terrible things. Even people you love. Even people who love you back. That's a dark lesson, but an important one. Miles needs to learn it too, eventually. That the world isn't fair, that bad things happen to good people, but that you don't have to be a victim. You can fight back. You can win. You can make things right, or at least better." His phone buzzed, a text from Lester. Bryant's lawyer is asking for a meeting. Wants to discuss a plea. He's broken. Broderick smiled coldly. "It's done. Bryant's going to plead out. He knows if this goes to trial, with Candace testifying, he's done. Life sentence, minimum. So you won. I survived. I protected my son. I made sure the people who tried to hurt us faced consequences. That's not winning. That's just refusing to lose." But it felt like winning. Chapter 7. The Testimony. The federal courthouse in Denver was packed the day Candace Livingston took the stand. Broderick sat in the gallery, Marlon beside him, watching his soon-to-be ex-wife raise her right hand and swear to tell the truth. She looked different. Thinner, older, wearing a simple navy dress and minimal makeup. Her hair was pulled back severely. She looked like what she was, a woman who'd made terrible mistakes and was trying to make amends. Across the courtroom, Clarence Bryant sat at the defense table, his expensive suit and lawyer unable to hide his fury. When Candace entered, he'd stared at her with undisguised hatred. She'd flinched, but kept walking. The prosecution had been building their case for 6 weeks. Documents, financial records, witness testimony from Bryant's victims, people who'd finally found courage to speak out once they knew Bryant was truly finished. But Candace's testimony was the keystone. the element that would tie everything together. Lester Lee approached the witness stand, his expression professional but kind. Mrs. Livingston, can you describe your relationship with the defendant, Clarence Bryant? Candace's voice was soft but steady. He became someone I owed money to, through my gambling addiction, and then he became someone who controlled my life. How much did you owe him? Initially, about $80,000. But with interest, his interest rates were illegal. I know that now. It grew to over $180,000. And when you couldn't pay, he offered me an alternative. Candace's hands trembled in her lap. He said if I helped him with a business opportunity, he'd forgive the debt. What business opportunity? Murdering my husband, Broderick Livingston, for the insurance money. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Even though everyone knew this was coming, hearing it spoken aloud was shocking. Tell us about the plan. For the next 2 hours, Candace laid it all out. The poison, disguised as herbal supplements. The fake domestic violence reports, designed to establish a pattern. The life insurance policy. The plan to stage Broderick's death as a suicide or accident. The timeline. The escape plan afterward. And you agreed to this? Lester asked. Yes. Candace's tears were real now. I was desperate, terrified, and sick. My gambling addiction had destroyed my judgment. I'd stolen from clients to pay gambling debts. I'd borrowed from loan sharks. I was drowning, and Bryant offered me a way out. A terrible, unforgivable way out, but I took it. I agreed to murder the father of my child. Did you want to do it? No. God, no. Every day, I thought about backing out. Every time I put that poison in Broderick's supplements, I felt sick. Every time I filed another false police report, I hated myself a little more. But Bryant had made it clear, if I didn't follow through, he'd hurt Miles. My son. He showed me pictures of Miles walking to school, playing in the park. He said accidents happen to children all the time. So I kept going. Why did you stop? I didn't stop. Broderick did. He figured it out. A police detective who was the father of our son's friend. He saw me at the station, put pieces together, warned Broderick. And Broderick, he escaped. He took Miles and disappeared. And I realized I was relieved. I'd been hoping for exactly that, secretly praying he'd figure it out and save himself, because I was too weak and too afraid to stop. Bryant's lawyer, Dolores Payne, cross-examined her brutally, pointed out every lie Candace had told, every crime she'd committed, every reason the jury shouldn't trust her. But Candace didn't flinch. She accepted responsibility, admitted her guilt, acknowledged her failures. You're a liar, a thief, and a would-be murderer, Dolores summed up. Why should anyone believe a word you say? They shouldn't, Candace replied quietly. I'm a terrible person who did terrible things. But I'm also telling the truth now. Every text message, every meeting, every plan, I've documented all of it. The prosecution has evidence beyond my testimony. I'm just trying to be honest, finally, for my son. So maybe someday he can look at me and see someone who was broken but try to fix herself. It was devastating testimony. When Candace stepped down, even Bryant's lawyer looked shaken. Broderick left the courthouse before the press could mob him, pulling his coat collar up against the cold November wind. Marlon followed, silent and supportive as always. That was hard to watch, Marlon finally said. Yeah. Broderick climbed into his truck, hands tight on the steering wheel. But it needed to happen. Miles needed to see that his mother took responsibility, that she faced what she did. He watched. No, but I recorded it. When he's older, if he wants to understand what happened, he can watch. He can see that she didn't try to dodge blame or make excuses. That counts for something. Does it count for you? Broderick considered the question. A little. Not enough to forgive her. Not enough to trust her again. But enough to let her be a part of Miles's life, supervised, limited, conditional. She's sick, Marlon. Addiction is a sickness. She needs treatment, not just punishment. And Bryant's not sick. He's just evil. And he's going away forever. Chapter 8. The Verdict. The jury deliberated for 16 hours over 3 days. During that time, Broderick moved through his life like a man underwater, present but distant, waiting for the final resolution. He'd return to work, taking on consulting projects that could be done remotely from the cabin. Miles had enrolled in a small school near Estes Park, making friends, slowly returning to normalcy. The boy still had nightmares sometimes, still asked questions about his mother, still struggled with the knowledge that the woman who'd given him life had tried to take his father's. But he was healing. Kids were resilient. Broderick made sure Miles had therapy, had stability, had unconditional love. The call came on a Thursday afternoon. Verdict reached. Court reconvening in 1 hour. Broderick made the drive to Denver alone this time. Marlon stayed with Miles, ready to celebrate or comfort depending on the outcome. The courthouse was packed again. Media, victims, curious observers. Broderick found a seat in the back, not wanting attention, just wanting closure. The jury filed in, their faces carefully neutral. Bryant stood, flanked by his lawyers, looking like a man who'd already accepted his fate. Has the jury reached a verdict? Judge Kirsten Christian asked. We have, Your Honor. On the charge of racketeering, how do you find? Guilty. On the charge of money laundering? Guilty. On the charge of extortion? Guilty. The litany continued. 47 charges, 47 guilty verdicts. By the end, Bryant had collapsed into his chair, head in his hands, destroyed. The judge thanked the jury and set sentencing for 3 weeks hence. But everyone in that courtroom knew what the sentence would be. Multiple life sentences, no possibility of parole. Clarence Bryant, 54 years old, would die in federal prison. Outside, the press swarmed. Lester gave a statement about justice being served, about the courage of witnesses, about the thorough work of federal investigators. He didn't mention Broderick's name, protecting him as promised. But reporters had done their research. They knew Broderick was the intended victim. They found him trying to leave through a side exit. Mr. Livingston, how do you feel about the verdict? Relieved, Broderick said simply. Justice was done. What do you say to critics who claim your wife got off too easy with her plea deal? I say they don't understand addiction, or coercion, or redemption. My wife made terrible choices, but she was also a victim of Bryant's manipulation. She's serving her sentence, probation, restitution, treatment. She's trying to be better. That's all anyone can ask. Will you ever reconcile with her? No. Our marriage is over. But for the sake of our son, I want her to succeed in her recovery. I want Miles to have a mother who's healed and whole, even if she can't be my wife anymore. What's next for you? Broderick thought about Miles, waiting at home. About the cabin in the mountains that had become their sanctuary. About the future they'd build together, just the two of them, starting fresh. Next, I go home to my son. I tell him that the bad man is going to prison, that we're safe, that we can stop running and start living again. I tell him that even when terrible things happen, even when people we love betray us, we can survive. We can heal. We can build something new and good from the ruins. That sounds like you've forgiven your wife. No, Broderick said firmly. I've accepted what she did. I've made peace with the fact that people are complicated, that love doesn't protect you from betrayal, that trust once broken can never be fully restored. But I've also learned that you can move forward without forgiveness. You can acknowledge someone's humanity without excusing their actions. You can want good things for someone without letting them back into your life. That's where I am. That's where I'll stay. He walked away from the microphones, from the cameras, from the courthouse that had been the stage for his family's destruction and reconstruction. In his truck, alone, he finally allowed himself to feel everything he'd been holding back for 2 months. Relief, grief, anger, sadness, victory, loss. He'd survived. Miles was safe. The bad guys were caught. Justice was served. But the cost had been everything he'd built. His marriage, his trust, his naivete, his belief in the fundamental goodness of people. Was it worth it? He started the engine and pointed the truck toward the mountains, toward home, toward his son. Yes, it was worth it. Chapter 9, New Beginnings. 6 months later, spring came to the Colorado mountains with dramatic force, snow melting, flowers blooming, wildlife emerging from winter dens. The world renewing itself. Broderick stood on the cabin's porch, watching Miles play in the meadow behind the property. 9 years old now, taller, stronger, laughing as he chased butterflies with a net. The nightmares had stopped. The therapy was working. The kid was going to be okay. Marlon emerged from the cabin, 2 beers in hand. Thought you could use this. They drank in comfortable silence. 2 men who'd weathered a storm together and come out the other side. Got an email from Lester, Marlon said eventually. Bryant's appeal was denied. All 47 convictions upheld. He's officially done. Good. Candace completed her inpatient treatment program. moving to a halfway house next month. Asked if she could have a supervised visit with Miles. Broderick considered this. What do you think? I think that's between you and Miles. What does he want? He says he misses her. Says he's not ready to forgive her, but he wants to see her. Make sure she's okay. That's mature for a 9-year-old. He's had to grow up fast. They watched Miles for a while longer. The boy had built a small fort from fallen logs, was now defending it from imaginary invaders with stick sword in hand. You did good, Brod, Marlon said quietly. You protected him. You survived. You made sure the right people paid the price. Not every man could have pulled that off. I just did what needed doing. No, most men would have run, or collapsed, or let rage take over. You stayed smart, stayed strategic, turned their plan against them, used their own weapons to destroy them. That takes something special. Broderick shrugged, uncomfortable with praise. I coordinated rescue operations for 20 years. This was just another operation. Identify the threat, analyze the resources, formulate a plan, execute decisively. It was more than that. It was personal. You had every right to lose your mind, to become the violent, unstable person they were trying to frame you as. But you didn't. You stayed the man Miles needed you to be. I had help. You, Lester, Frank Ray, Donald, my contacts at ATF. I couldn't have done it alone. True. But you're the one who organized everyone, kept it all together. You're the quarterback. Don't diminish that. Miles ran up to the porch, out of breath and grinning. Dad, I found a bird's nest. Want to see? Absolutely. Lead the way. They followed Miles into the meadow, to where a robin had built a nest in a low branch. 3 blue eggs nestled inside. New life, Miles observed. That's cool, right? After the winter, everything comes back. Yeah, buddy. That's how it works. Winter's hard, but spring always comes eventually. Is that what happened to us? We had a hard winter, and now it's spring. Broderick knelt beside his son. Something like that. We went through a very difficult time. We lost things we cared about. Our old house, your mom being around, the way things used to be. But we survived. We're here. We're safe. We're building something new. Something better? Different. Not necessarily better, but good in its own way. We've got this cabin, these mountains, new friends, new routines. We've got each other. That's pretty good. Miles thought about this, his young face serious. Dad, do you think Mom can be part of our spring? Not like before, but I don't know. Like a smaller part. Do you want her to be? I think so. I'm still mad at her. But I miss her too. Is that weird? No, buddy. That's complicated. And complicated is okay. Life is complicated. Broderick pulled his son close. If you want to see her, we can arrange that. Supervised visits, safe places, just you and her talking. We'll take it slow. See how it feels. Will you be mad if I forgive her someday? Never. Your relationship with your mom is yours. You get to decide what that looks like, how much or how little you want her in your life. I'll support whatever you choose. Even if I want to see her, even then. Miles hugged his father tight. Thanks, Dad. For everything. For saving us. For being strong. You're strong too, Miles. You're the one who brought me that envelope. You trusted me. You were brave. We saved each other. They stayed like that for a long moment. Father and son, survivors of a storm, builders of a new life. Later that evening, after Miles was asleep, Broderick sat on the porch again, laptop open, reviewing job offers that had come in. Urban planning consultant for natural disaster preparation. Rescue operation coordinator for an international relief organization. Training director for FEMA. Good opportunities. Important work. But all of them based far from the mountains, far from the peace he and Miles had found. He closed the laptop. The job could wait. For now, they needed this. The quiet, the safety, the chance to heal without rushing. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Mr. Livingston, this is Frank Ray. Wanted you to know, Bryant tried to have you killed from prison. Hired someone through his old network. We caught the guy before he got anywhere near you. Bryant's in solitary now, facing additional charges. Thought you should know. Stay safe. FR. Broderick deleted the message and blocked the number. Bryant was still trying, even from prison, even after everything. Some people never learned. But it didn't matter. Bryant was locked up forever. His hitman was caught. The threat was neutralized. Broderick was good at neutralizing threats. He looked out at the mountains, dark and massive against the star-filled sky. Somewhere out there, Candace was trying to rebuild her life. Bryant was rotting in a cell. Marlon was asleep in the guest room. Miles was safe in his bed, dreaming of birds and butterflies in spring. And Broderick Livingston, once a man who believed the world was fundamentally good, now a man who knew the world was fundamentally dangerous but survivable, sat on his porch and allowed himself something he hadn't felt in months. Peace. Not happiness. That would take time. Not forgiveness. That might never come. Not the innocence he'd lost. That was gone forever. But peace. The knowledge that he'd done everything right. Played every card perfectly. Protected what mattered most. Emerged victorious not through violence or vengeance, but through intelligence, strategy, and an unwavering commitment to his son. He'd been tested in ways he never imagined. And he'd passed. That was enough. Spring came to the mountains, and with it, the promise of new beginnings. For Miles. For Broderick. For whatever future they'd build together, one careful day at a time. The envelope that had started everything sat in a safe deposit box now. Evidence in a case that was closed, but not forgotten. Sometimes Broderick thought about that moment when Miles had handed it to him. How his world had shattered and reformed in the space of a few photographs. He'd been a different man then. Trusting. Naive. Unprepared for the darkness that lived in people's hearts. Now he was harder. Sharper. Wiser. Better? He wasn't sure. But he was here. Miles was safe. And that was all that mattered. The mountains stood eternal, indifferent witnesses to human drama. And Broderick Livingston, survivor, father, man who'd stared into the abyss and refused to blink, finally allowed himself to rest. The war was over. He'd won. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.